who's ever gonna build the dock is committed and ready to go. And so, and we have no control over what they might say.
So the first step,
But just the fact of having a permit from somebody else doesn't mean anything.
right,
We have a dock application in the building department right now that's got all the permits from everybody but the village.
Right, and so they all defer to the village.
so this was my question. When, what is the order of events? And then it's only when the planning board has the final dock plan that we then get a public hearing on the dock.
Yeah. Well, the
And
planning
then-
board meetings are public meetings, anyone can come
Right,
and
but that's
as
different
it's
than a public
discussed.
hearing, sort of.
But it's not really a public hearing, it's just gonna be
What's a-
presented to the planning
Well,
board,
it'll be a
correct?
public meeting, so
Okay, yeah.
it's not.
But this says a schedule of public hearing.
Right,
That's what I
yes,
was
so
wondering.
the idea is that there may be lots of ideas and plans floating around, but we want a mechanism to ensure that whatever is designed actually matches what's specified, and this seems to be the way to do it.
Right,
And it's sort of unclear whether the village needs a permit from the village to build something, but Brookhaven, I'm pretty sure needs to give a permit, and I don't think they would wanna, and what we've seen in the past is they don't wanna hear about it until the village is even declared that it's planned. But we have little control over all of the other steps.
right.
It just, so
Right, so
we
I'm
can
trying,
only say what we can say.
right, I'm trying to understand what is the linear arrangement of the steps that are going to happen from here forward?
Oh, I don't know.
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Well,
Well,
we have a notice out for bids. Once we pick a company and their design, then we'll move forward with getting the necessary permits and sending it up to the planning department, correct?
But that's different than what this says.
Well, yeah, but as I say, the permits from all entities don't really mean anything until the village approves that design.
Okay.
And we've had numerous, or there have been instances where others have issued permits that then get revised as we continue with, as the planning board continues with the evaluation. They go back and they say, oh, I've changed, okay, we'll put it over here, oh, we'll do this.
Right,
So it's a mechanism to sort of find out if there are fundamental complaints from others more than approvals. So if the Army Corps comes back and said, no way would we ever approve this, then we learn that. But if they come back and say we approve it, and say, okay, thank you.
right. Well, the wording in this says specifically that that no later than 60 days after the design is deemed final and complete, the planning board shall schedule a public hearing on the design.
Right.
And it has to be in the official village newspaper, which I don't know if someone can clarify to me what the official village newspaper is.
It's either Beacon Times or Newsday,
Which is it?
either one. Which one did you put it into, Jim?
Village Times,
Village Times.
Beacon Times.
And that the village clerk shall conspicuously place along the notice of roadsides that there's gonna be a public hearing about it regarding the design will be held before the village planning board at a specific place and time, right? So I'm just trying to
So it says-
figure out, right, so what are the steps that are gonna occur? So right
So
now,
at some day, there'll be a plan that
There'll be a
shows up in the
plan,
planning
and-
board folder.
and the plan will go to
then
the planning board, and then after the planning board approves, then permits will be sought?
Well,
Permits to go on at the same time.
yeah, I think, as I said, it's useful in the process to learn the opinion of the multiple entities that are
Right,
involved.
is there any point along, once this train starts rolling, is there any point along that it can be stopped?
No.
So it is already rolling, it is not going to stop all
Well,
of this
the
is just
design-
Well, the
for,
design might change a
But I
little
think
bit,
the design needs, the idea is the design needs to look like that.
right, so there's gonna be a design,
So,
the dock will happen, it doesn't matter what the,
no, in my
What-
mind, what this says is, if for some reason a dock is built, it's gonna have to look
right,
like that.
but that's my question.
This doesn't authorize a dock,
But,
it allows a dock.
the
Right.
board authorizes the dock.
so the board has said it's going forward, it doesn't matter what the public hearings say, it doesn't matter what the rest of happens.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter, I'm saying that we were elected to sit up here.
I'm not asking what you're elected to do, I'm just
Okay.
asking
So we're moving
a
forward on the
simple
dock, yes.
question.
We are
So
moving
the
forward.
dock is going to happen and nothing that any public hearing or other thing will happen can intervene with that. The only thing that would intervene with that is if you do not receive permitting.
I don't know, you can't commit yourself to it.
Yeah, I
The
know.
procedure is what it is. I mean, there's no commitment that the board can give either way.
The board can tell me whether it is possible that this can, that
I
a
think-
public
I can't
hearing in
tell
the
you.
future could affect it versus it will not affect it. That is what the board can tell me. The board can tell me whether or not this is a done deal, whether they have made their decision and they are not going to veer from that, or whether what transpires between now and then does. That
can't-
is,
I
that
recommend
is
to the
what I'm
board that you
asking.
don't.
Answer that.
If somebody's asking you,
Okay.
if something's a done deal, you can't even answer that question.
Okay.
Thank you. No, we
There's
can't
gonna be a
answer.
public hearing on it, that's the next, eventually that'll be the next step.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Susan Laskowski. So I just wanted to catch up what the answer is. I think Diana brought it up last time about the possibility that other people would be able, anybody from the town of Brookhaven would be able to use the dock. And I'm wondering what the answer to that is. I think I asked our lawyer, and I thought you said you were gonna look into it.
I believe he's looked into it, but I don't think that you haven't given the board an answer yet.
I haven't expressed an opinion, but I can say that I have researched it. I gave an opinion at the last meeting that it was my belief that we could limit the use of the dock to non-residents.
Okay.
And I have done research in the meantime, and both case law and also statutes, and that regulate this, and my opinion hasn't changed. The opinion that I gave that night hasn't changed.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, could you restate what that
I
opinion is?
just did, I just said that at the last
we
meeting.
could possibly,
At the last meeting, I said that it was my understanding that we could limit it to the residents only, and but that I would research it in the meantime. I have researched it, both case law and statutes, and my opinion hasn't changed. The opinion that I expressed that night hasn't changed.
that we could.
There's a process that we could go through, I believe, to limit it to residents only, and I'll advise the board as to how to do that.
I mean, should that be absolutely definitive before any of this train rolls further?
So for the.
I mean, I would guess it's like, what would the opinion of the board be if that weren't the case? And in fact, that we had an obligation to make this open to everybody in the town of Brookhaven. Would that change anybody's idea about, about going forward with the dock or not?
I don't know. I can't speak on that. I don't have an opinion right now. I don't. Anyone else?
How about anybody else? No
I'm
opinion?
always open to hearing what's going on.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, as a resident, that wouldn't be particularly, I mean, I'm not for the dock to begin with, but then if anybody could create even more traffic, going down Washington Avenue, that would be terrible, and it would be noisier, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into that, but, and anyway, and I think the money would be better spent drawing putting a yellow line down Washington, because as it is, people are driving in the middle of the road, either because they drive like that, or they don't know, where the middle of the road is. And that seems like a basic expense that could be done.
Any other comments on the dock?
The dock legislation, not the dock.
Oh, dock and
Yeah.
wharfs, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to close local law 64 Docks and Wharfs? Second? Uh, Okay, the next local law of 2017, Chapter 123, rental regulations, was put together to ensure that rental properties meet the New York State Fire Prevention and Building Codes, and that the rentals are not dangerous to the residents or inside or the people that are surrounding the rentals. Does anybody wish to comment on the rental?
Felicia Chilling. Last time I brought up on page 2 the definition of a boarding house or rooming house, and it still states, a building that provides sleeping accommodations with or without compensation for 16 or fewer persons on either transient or permanent basis, with or without meals, but without permanent cooking facilities for individual occupants. So that basically is every house in the village. Can
Frank,
be
would you like
deemed.
to address that?
Without cooking.
That is not correct, that is not true.
Why? It says 16 or fewer people.
Yes, 16 or fewer people, that's the definition used by the state, because more than 16 people would no longer be applied to that, would apply to like a motel, hotel, rather than boarding house or rooming house, and that's why the state uses that. That does not apply to every house in
So,
the village.
Do we have any house that
Do you,
applies?
do you have a house with a kitchen? Does
I don't
everybody-
have to answer that. Do you?
I'm trying to give you an example.
No,
Every
I'm
house with a
asking-
kitchen
I
has,
asked
every
the
house here
question.
has a kitchen, correct?
Correct. I would
Okay, so-
hope so, but I don't know that for a fact because I'm not in them.
Every occupant in the home has access to that kitchen. And therefore, every home in this village would not apply to that
So
section.
let me ask you, why would we have such a definition in here if it really is worthless?
It's in here, but I'll refer you to the village attorney if you like. because
Is
I'm
that,
not an
what
attorney.
are you holding up?
It's in the New York State Code,
The international code? I'm asking.
that's correct.
Okay, are you familiar with Agenda 21 by any chance?
You don't have to answer that, Frank. This is not an ongoing discussion.
Well, you addressed me
He addressed your
to ask.
question, you asked about that.
I didn't get a
addressed it.
satisfactory answer, thank
Okay.
you.
Any other comments on the rental? You have a motion to close?
No, I'm,
Right.
so, I think on this, question of the, boarding house, there are lots of, words later on that sort of help clarify what a boarding house is. Page 3, when it discusses an immediate family, there is another relationship that's legal in New York that applies to residences and leases and stuff, which is a domestic partnership. It would seem that that should be included as one of the things that applies to an immediate family.
That's true.
Page 7, well, I'm not, don't have the number here, but it says it takes 120 days to process an application. It seems like a little bit excessive and not very user-friendly. I'm just curious what that justification is for 120 days and whether any commitment could be made to do it a little bit faster.
I think that the original thought was that there's a couple people involved in approving that permit, and that we want to make sure there's enough time for it to all get done. But I know, probably not gonna, we do things almost
Is
every
that,
week or
that's like
twice a
how long
month.
it takes a building permit? Is there a requirement that you have to answer within you have 120 days to answer for a building permit? I don't
Yeah,
know, it
well,
seems out of line.
But we do it now, we do the building permits in 5, we get back to people in 5
Right,
days, so
but in
maybe.
terms of commerce, if someone's trying to commit to a rental or something like that, you have to have a schedule that's really, both likely and not like 4 months.
I don't think that's unreasonable to change that. It's, we get through it pretty quick
Okay,
unless
well,
it's
I-
standard, right?
I'm
Is that
doing my
something that
best,
is required? Does it have to be that
I
long?
thought that was removed, I don't have a copy of that. But
Okay.
you do need time for the application and the inspection.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, I have another question.
okay, let me finish my
You
list.
can keep asking.
So if a house, if the property gets a new owner, does that terminate the resident, this doesn't say that a new owner getting a new owner terminates the rental permit. It says that the new owner has to apply for a rental permit, but it doesn't terminate the rental permit that presently exists. And that would, I have no idea what rights residents have, but in any case, it should be clear that if you sell a house, you don't buy the resident permit with the house when you buy the house. I will note that if there is a perceived violation, that at first code enforcement allows complaints. There's 30-day period for written notice about this violation, and then it says that upon recommendation of the code enforcement officer, the village board of trustees shall hold a public hearing on such recommendation within 60 days after receiving the recommendation, and after such hearing, the board shall make written findings and conclude a decision. So this is sort of along the lines of our property maintenance discussion we had before, and it says that in issues, essentially it's saying that in issues where maybe there's some safety concern or some nuisance concern, like an apartment that's not being done right, the suggested remedy is there'd be a public hearing if the thing can't be resolved, and thus the public is aware of the problem and has the ability to comment on what is supposedly a community standard kind of thing. And so I think that informs the discussion of the other law. On page 11, regarding, this is related to this boarding house thing, there's a number of things that are listed that say, which make some sense, if there are locked rooms or so on, then maybe this isn't a proper lease, but I think in many examples, if someone does leave a house for someone else for some period of time, it's not unusual to put prop possessions in a room and lock it up or something like that. So what I'd suggest is that it'd be possible to declare on the application if there are going to be spaces that are not going to be accessible by all people living in the house, so that this practice can continue. And that shouldn't automatically make it into a boarding house. And the last question on page 14, I was wondering what deal has been arranged with the village of Greenport.
Was it a mistake? They're coming to take us over.
Excuse me?
They're coming to take us over.
Oh, okay, because the last thing says, I have to find it.
I guess I copied an enforcement provision or something.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay.
It says if the defendant has cooperated with the village of Greenport in the investigation, that this will somehow reduce the minimum fine if there's prosecution.
That's just a typo, well, correct that. The village of Poquott.
Okay, so you're gonna
Thank you.
change that? Okay,
Thank you.
There's 2 seats over here, David, if they want to sit there.
I think those were my comments.
Just sit right in the front row. Any other comments for the rental?
Diana, so it says that there's an assumption of rental even when there's no exchange of money. So this means that if someone is to have a house sitter at their house when they're gone to take care of a pet or their plants or whatever, that this code would cover them. Is that the intent? Because that's what the word of it says. And it also, so then that would preclude someone from having a house sitter. It would preclude someone from doing a house exchange, which is not uncommon when professors go on sabbatical. They will do a house exchange with someone in wherever they're going to do their thing. Does this preclude that kind of thing?
Well, house sitter, no, but
Why?
someone's
Because it
exchanging
says-
a house for a long period of time,
But
they
it
have to
says
fill out the permit, right?
assumption of rental even with no
We
exchange.
should have
So
talked. Frank, is if it's something where it's a certain period of time, then they would be filling out.
I would imagine so, if it's a certain period of time, you certainly would.
What is a certain
On a
period?
house check, I don't know, I'd have to refer back to the village attorney for that,
Okay,
but certainly not a house sitter.
yeah.
Well, what is a certain period of time? Because I might have a house sitter for a year.
I will address it in the law, thank you for bringing that up.
Can a law be passed if you don't clarify this at this hearing?
Well, we can close the public hearing and then make
Yes.
revisions, right?
This is the Airbnb issue that
Yeah.
I'm raising.
Any other comments on that?
I think basically exchanges, in-kind exchanges, is consideration. You know, I don't think there's any, I mean, somebody's letting you live in their house, that has a value to it. Your consideration is that you let them live in your house, I mean, that's a transaction for consideration. I think as far as the house sitting, you know, I think it depends on the situation, the length of time, whether there's other consideration involved. And I don't think that we can make a generalization as to, you can't do house sitting, I mean, that would be, we can't do that, so. You know, I think it depends on the individual situation and what's involved. It would be up to the discretion of the code enforcement, and they would rely on my interpretation at the time.
Okay.
You know, out there, other villages, I mean, other people have had to deal with this. Is that,
I know Great Ford has the rental.
You know, many villages and towns have rental.
yeah, no, but to this point, is, because I raised it earlier in the discussion about Airbnb, which is, you know, becoming more and more common, and I said, well, it's not a problem now, I would expect that down the road it would be, and now I'm hearing that, you know, in the academic community, it does go on a lot, that, I just have to think that other villages have had to deal with this. If it's that common, we should probably give some consideration to that, because, you know, the process is what it is, it's just one more thing that people have to go through. The idea of this is twofold: one, for us to make sure that we don't have a dangerous situation, and two, to, you know, if we're gonna be supervising the neighborhood and whatever, we should be reimbursed for the code guys and going around and doing inspections and so on. So I just wanna make sure that we don't make a blanket rule, and then we have a lot of university people in the village.
The lab also, they go on.
Yeah, so if that's the case, I'm not sure that I have a solution to it, but I just wanna know what other people.
That situation hasn't come up. The exchange situation?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that before
Could we put a
coming
time?
up. A long-term professor exchange or.
Well, I know people, you know, a year or 6 months, I know people who have done that.
Mhm. To me, I think if I was asked the question how I interpreted that based on a situation that comes up, I would interpret that as consideration, and there's a swap. The value of the value of inhabiting somebody's residence the habitation of somebody's residence has a value to it. The valuation of your residence, the habitation of your residence has a value to it. You're swapping values, that's still a rental transaction.
But the net is zero, number one. Number two, yes, I'm gonna concede that point to you. But is that what we as a village wanna do if we have, number one, a number of people doing it, which right now we don't, but I expect that they're going to, between university and Airbnb, which is a growing thing. But number two, what do we gain by doing that? I mean, we're not, the idea behind this is not how much of a net exchange of money is going on and we're somehow involved in commerce. The issue has to do with the underlying reason we're even sitting here talking about it, which has to do with safety and all those kinds of things. So if you know, I don't know what the answer is, but I just think that we should kick this around a little bit, because I think that we're not talking about necessarily having people turning their houses into a boarding house and having all kinds of people and parties and things that got us started on this. But to see whether or not there's a way that we can have it. I mean, I think it would make sense that we could have a provision that says you have to notify the village if you're going to do that, so that we know that there's no strangers breaking in and living in the house and, you know, while somebody's away. So if we had some kind of a modification to the form that allowed people to do that, and you know, you can say, all right, for $5, fill out the form and just tell us what the deal is.
I think that's the easy thing of just changing the, application.
Okay, well, maybe it's simpler than I'm making it out.
But as a board, if you're, so it sounds like you're asking me if as a board you can legislate that, yes you can, that legislate your interpretation, yes you can, you know, if that's what
And
you
you
choose.
don't, but you don't know anybody in other villages?
I've never heard that before.
Any other comments on,
Yeah.
local law, chapter 123, right?
So, just, in some of the specifics there, maybe arrangements where, someone has a caregiver who lives in, or, domestic help or some sort. So under this, are they renting a room? They would need a rental permit for that, because there's some compensation there and so on.
No.
It really depends on the situation,
Okay.
it's fact specific, it's situation specific.
So you recommend?
I mean, if the value of the room is part of the compensation, then wouldn't that would be a.
Well, I don't know, I just, if
Well, I don't
one
know
is
either,
talking,
because it's
started
just-
to talk about other variants, it sounds like if some question comes up, one should initiate the application procedure and find out then whether or not this is truly
That's
required.
what we're starting to think about.
Yep.
An au pair would fit into that.
Right, so that would be, but then you just get the rental permit and you're all set.
Right.
But just notifying the village of it.
Well, even pay the money for the permit.
Barbara?
Yeah, I just, Barbara Donovan, 26 Chestnut. Just one other comment. We're all so busy about renting a house, which we all, when somebody rents their house, it's usually a family or it's somebody who we know what's going on and the house is being taken care of. What about all the illegal apartments within homes? You're talking about a room that a caretaker, maybe we should do something about that. What about all the rooms that people are renting, and we all know about it, and we know who they are illegally? So, don't you think there should be something where, if you're doing a law, include like an accessory apartment with it or something? It just doesn't make sense to me. What you're actually doing is you're going after people who are renting nice homes to probably legitimate families who are gonna be an asset to the community, and yet those people who have illegal apartments, and God only knows who's in those illegal, God only knows if they're up to code, that's a good word. I mean, I'm just not understanding it. I feel like you're putting the cart before the horse, that's it.
Any other comments? Do you have a motion to close local law, chapter 123, rental? Second? Is that for 7, should we do the tax thing first, or should we do the last one, the property maintenance and vehicles? Or should-
Vehicles first and then.
Okay.
then-
Local law amending village code, chapter 169, vehicles and traffic. Would anyone like to make a comment on that? A motion to close? Oh, I'm sorry, Roger.
So, we used to have stop lines in the village, and you could stop before a stop line, which, some cases is several car lengths beyond the stop sign. Now the words stop line are removed, and, so I guess this encourages people not to stop when they actually get to the street. Anyway, I don't see the rationale for removing what's in New York code about stop lines, just so you don't have to paint lines on the street.
What, can you explain what you're talking about?
So often at a stop sign, there's the sign on the post and the thing, and then in certain instances, that sign can't actually be at the intersection, it's some distance away, maybe a foot, maybe a little more. But then a white line is drawn on the road, across the road at the place where the car is supposed to stop. The prior version of this law, the one in effect now, says that you stop at the stop sign or stop line. And in this version, the stop line reference is gone.
We haven't had stop lines in 10 years.
Excuse me?
We haven't had stop sign lines in 10 years.
Well, they're on this road now.
Well, you can't, they're not visible. I mean,
Well, that's why there's an or there, but if.
I think common sense, so don't
Well,
people
if
notice
the
that?
lines are painted on the street, they'll paint the stop lines.
I
A
don't,
stop line painted on the street isn't gonna stop them. If they're not stopping at the stop sign, what?
So it's okay on the Van Brunt Manor Road at Shore Road if I stop 3 car lengths before the intersection when I can't even see around the corner? And then proceed along and say the village.
Gotta use some common sense, Roger.
There should be.
You know.
So what if I don't stop at the
There should be
stop
stop
sign,
lines.
but stop at the stop line? Then I'm in violation of the village code?
we'll look into that, thank you.
Heathermere.
Any other comments? Okay, do I have a motion to close chapter 120, no, I'm sorry, 169, vehicles and traffic?
So moved.
Second. Local law, new village code, chapter 120, property maintenance. Would anyone like to make comments on that?
When was that law published, the public hearing published? Joe?
December, this is a continuation of this December hearings.
Okay, but it significantly was changed by adding that whole chapter on bamboo, that's a whole chapter. And I had spoken to somebody and they said that you have to republish the public hearing because you significantly changed the law. I just want to make that statement.
Can I just, I remember at the December meeting, I asked specifically if this was going, that public hearing was going to be terminated, closed, or continued. And it was confirmed that it was closed at the time. And the minutes didn't say that, but it was clearly stated that that public hearing was closed in December.
I thought we left it open.
We did.
No, we didn't. I know you left several others open, and I asked specifically if this one was going to be closed or continued. I don't know if there was a video made at that time, but it was stated that it was going to be closed. And so, I mean, in addition, I'll say the comments about not having any idea what the present rule says, because the version I got from the clerk's office 2 days ago still says December 8 on it. And
What we should do is, my recommendation is that we should stop the multiple versions. You know, different people working at the same time, just tie it together into one version. Renotice the public hearing for the next meeting, and then
That's fine.
we'll not have any more changes.
Yeah, we were all mixed up right here ourselves.
Yeah, and that's good, then we can fix what the things that we wanted to clarify.
Okay,
let's
pull
do
it
that.
together and then we'll just renotice.
Okay, so I don't have to make any motion for any of that. do I?
Well, no, the board would have a motion to, we'll renotice the public hearing for the next public meeting on the property maintenance code.
My recollection, Raj, just for the record, is that we did intend, we thought it was a good point about the bamboo, it was a clear omission, and so we were continuing it. So I don't know what was said, maybe mistakenly said.
well, I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah,
when
but I
the
thought it was
mayor
also-
says, yes, we are closing the public hearing, I assume that
I
means
thought we
that
were,
we're
but
closing.
anyway, this solves.
Well, I think it's, yeah, it would be good to, as Joe suggests, sort of draw the line and make sure we're all discussing the same thing.